So my name's John Best. Welcome to Town Hall number 45. It's Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. A new year, very exciting. And with me, as always, is my faithful sidekick. He is Robin to my Batman. He's a small fish to my Aquaman.
But I don't lay eggs.
He's Dory to my Nemo. I could keep going. But he's Woody to my Buzz. But anyways, Mike Lawson, and Mike's with C Broadcast and has been really part of the backbone of the creative industry in the sense of writing. Speaking of backbones, we have a great guest with us today. We were able to score an interview with Aaron. Aaron Passman's on. He's a CU Journal writer. He's an author. He's been in the industry for a long, long time, and has a lot of background. And I was going through his Twitter, and there's so many things I want to talk about. So Aaron, welcome.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So before we get started, I'm going to do a little something because this fascinates me. So who here is, Mike, have you heard of GameStop? What's going on with GameStop?
I have frequented it there quite often.
Yeah. Well, so do you know what's going on with the stock?
I saw that. It's going nuts. Yeah.
So I'm going to explain that for a second, and I'll be interested in just a little bit of discussion. So here's what's happened. There is a Reddit group. For those of you that don't know what Reddit is, it's like a posting board. It's similar to the old forums that we used to have way back in the day. And one of them is called Wall Street Bets. And there was a guy who posted way back in November, essentially that he thought GameStop was a good buy. And what he did was he YOLO GME from Tarek, he gets it. So what he did was he started buying it, and he started posting his gains, like what he was making on it. The reason he thought it was a good buy was, if you remember, people thought GameStop was going to die because their primary business is, like, say Aaron has a PS4 and he buys a whole bunch of different games. He finishes them all, and now he just doesn't need them anymore. So he takes them up to GameStop, he trades them in, he gets some new games, and that's the business, right? And with kids, that's a big deal. If you have kids, that's been a big deal. Yep. The concern was that the new platforms, which the two major ones in the industry are the Xbox and PlayStation, the new models were not going to have DVD drives. They weren't going to sell discs anymore. They have been threatening that, which would mean that GameStop would have a limited lifespan, because one of the models of digital rights media, which is DRM, known as DRM, and games that you buy online, is you can't take them back. I can't share the game I bought digitally from the PlayStation store with Mike. All I can do is just buy it, and it sits in my library. So that was kind of what he was saying was, hey, this is not going to die. We've seen the reviews on the new PS5, and he started bringing that together. And people started jumping in, but then they noticed something else. And what they noticed was, I'm going to go ahead and bring up a quick website here, because this is just so fascinating to me what's occurring today. We've never seen, this is like an unprecedented event that we're seeing in the stock
like market. A Netflix type of thing. They change.
What's that?
Do they pull like a Netflix thing where they kind of change their model?
No, that's the whole thing. Okay. There is sort of Finviz. That's what it is. Yeah, Finviz. Got it. So there is kind of one thing, which I'll get to in a minute. But so the company symbol, by the way, there is no financial advice here. This is just the sound that I make when my mouth moves. If the SEC is listening, do not go and buy anything based on what I know. I'm just sharing information. So just in case you're following on that, that's not me. But what people noticed was, and if I zoom in here, they noticed that this stock was kind of over leveraged in the sense of what they were calling shorting, right? So there's 65 million shares. Of that, 50 million are available to trade. And so that means 15 million is probably tied up with owners and staff or whatever. And then this float ratio, look at it, it's 140%. So the short float, what a short is let's say that Mike owns a GameStop stock, and he got it for $10 through his broker. I could go to the broker and go, hey, can you lend me that stock? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell it first, then buy it. So I'm going to say, okay, I bought it, or I sold it at 10, but then I bought it back at 9. So I just gained $1. Make sense? So I'm betting, it's like if you ever played craps, it's like betting on the come. Everybody hates the table where the dude, says he's not going to bet on the come out. They always hate that guy. I'm usually that guy. But so now, but the thing is, this is 140%. Numbers like this are usually under like 10 or 15% people shorting it. So they looked into it. So the people on the Wall Street Bet figured it out. It was this company, and you might see the word Melvin floating around. It was this company called Melvin, which is a hedge fund. And the hedge fund had gotten into this and sort of overbought the stock. Now, let's say that you buy the stock at 10, and then the stock goes down, or the stock goes down to 5, you just made $5. But what happens if it goes up? So I've lent Aaron's, I bought Aaron's stock, but now the broker needs it back because Aaron's going, hey, I just made $10. It's now 20. So either I got to give them $10 to cover it, or they're going to take it from me. And when they take it from me, they're going to have a loss, or I'm going to have a loss of $10. So what do? Well, when the stock goes up, they get out and they buy back. Or if they're big enough, they double down on it. And that's what these guys did. So suddenly it became a war between these guys on Reddit who were upset in some ways because this happened to Tesla. You can create a downward, sort of an artificial downward pressure by short selling, because basically to the market, it looks like there's no confidence in it. So look, here's the first step. This is when it first started. You can see the shorting, and then they corrected it. They just bought a whole bunch more and shorted it. And then the Wall Street guys got involved, not the Wall Street guys, but the Reddit guys got involved. They cranked it up again. And these Melvin guys are in for so much money, they had to do something. So they then shorted it again. They basically tried to drop it down to stop the price. Well, the Reddit guys figured that out because it's real simple. If I'm going to keep buying it at a certain amount because I believe in the valuation and I drive the price up, they're stuck with it. They already made their deal. So now, since yesterday, we started somewhere around 94, and we now are trading. This is amounts, I think. Here we are. We're trading at 322.89, and that's because people picked up on it. And if they hang on to it, then eventually they'll get what's called a short squeeze, which is a perfectly legal thing to do. Basically, you squeeze out all the people that shorted it. What's fascinating to me about this is that, one, first of all, TD Ameritrade and Schwab have stopped trading. And the other one that's massively done like this is AMC. And, to be fair, with Tesla, they were betting on electric cars and they wanted to, it looks like they were defending their oil stocks. With GameStop, they probably shorted it because they thought that the DVD industry was going to go away, the gaming DVD industry, and it did not. And with AMC, which is the other big stock you may hear about today, they did that because movies are gone, right? So they shorted AMC over, generally 30% is high for a short. So what these guys have realized is if we keep buying it and keep hanging on and buy it at this price and buy it at the next price, you're going to force the short guys' hands, because when you short, like if I buy this stock at 322 and I buy one share, my maximum loss is how much? $322, because the lowest it can go is 0. But when you short a stock, it can go it's infinite. It's whatever the difference is of what you owe and where it is. You just keep going because you're betting on the rise of it. So, right now these guys are, if we do the math here, if we look at the shorting, they are at, somewhere around 100 to 150 for these shorts, and the stock's trading at 326. Let's just call it 350 to make it easy. They're $200 in the hole on every share that they own, and the brokers are going to have to call it. So it's fascinating. But the fascinating part to me, Aaron, was so people are like, oh, this is collusion or whatever they're calling it. But hedge fund managers, just like Crayons, get together in little tables and talk about what to buy and what not to, right? They just don't do it out in the open. That's all this is a Reddit channel where a whole bunch of people said, I don't think GameStop's going to go out of business. But they also noticed this feature, and this was wrong of whoever if you put your organization in this position, that's a risk. Mm-hmm. So you pay for that risk if people notice it. But never have we had this transparency where they've been getting subscribers into this. It brought Reddit down. Reddit went down, TD Ameritrade went down today, so did Schwab, and a bunch of other trading sites. Robinhood can't even keep up. For those of you that don't know what Robinhood is, it's kind of a quasi bank that lets you buy stocks on fractionals. So what happens if, like, we have to publish all these numbers in the NCUA, and I don't know what the gaming would be. So Aaron, I'm kind of looking at you for this, but let's say a whole bunch of these guys got on and went, you know what? We're going to squeeze XYZ Crayon because we've been looking at the NCUA.gov 5300 calls. And if all of us don't get loans from them or whatever, you see what I'm saying? It's fascinating. And right now they're talking about the New York Stock Exchange shutting this down, the SEC coming after the people, like all kinds of stuff.
I just got this from Mashable as you were talking, John. I don't know if you can read that.
Yeah, Reddit's Wall Street Bets breaks all-time traffic record. Yep, and everybody on there. So if you want to see what it looks like,
Just
now,
as you were talking,
I'm going to show you what it looks like because I joined it because I wanted to see. Keep in mind that I do not. Again, this is not me trying to do stock, nor is it me trying to give you any advice. And there may be language on here that's inappropriate for Kevin Sarver. So nothing I can do about that. He has delicate ears. I remember all those times that he did it. So it's called Wall Street Bets. That's not it. It has 2 E's. And it has a zillion. You can see it now has 3 million. Last night it had less than 1 million. And by the way, I'll post a link in here. The guy really explained this really well in here. That's how I got this far. But here they have to keep starting the threads because they're running. The threads only hold so many posts, and they're just overrunning them. This is like the 3rd one today. So as you can see, it's everybody like. I picture it like this. You ever seen a flock of the geese flying? You ever hear them? You hear how they're honking at each other? You know why they're honking? They're encouraging the front duck because the front duck is the one taking all the wind. That's why they fly like that, to break the wind. And so they're just encouraging that guy. Like they want him to stay up there as long as they can because when he drops off, if you watch the little arrow, someone else will move into that place and start. And there's a whole downward course lining on how they fly, which is interesting as well. But they're just encouraging that duck. Well, that's what's happening here. Everybody's in here going, don't sell, don't sell. And you see this a lot. This is how they get away with the SEC thing. This is not financial advice, and I'm, not smart. So interesting what's going on. And I just wonder, like, this is a shift. It just happened. I'm just blown away by it. So I don't know. What do you think, Aaron? This just happened. So I gave Aaron no. He did not get a chance.
This was not in the pre-Zoom call roundup of what we'd be discussing. The thing that I always say is about credit unions in general is if I knew anything about this stuff, I'd be running a credit union instead of writing about them. And I think the same applies here. I don't even know.
The social aspect of it is interesting. Like, we've seen little Facebook groups roll up around, credit unions and stuff. But what if there was like just a targeted bank group that, didn't just go after banks, but, everybody? I mean, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating to me that this happened. And like CNBC, they just don't even know what to do with this. They literally don't know. This is such an anomaly, so outside everything. So anyways, I'll skip. Just if you're interested, text me or hit me in the chat. I'll send some more information. I think Tariq said something here. The guy who started this is up 17 million and still hasn't sold.
Wow.
He has a name that would tell you that, but it includes curse words, so I'm going to skip it. But yeah, I certainly am going to do some more on this. I just was fascinated, and it's like topical. So, but let's shift. So, Aaron, here we are in 2021, new administration, and all of a sudden things are starting to shift, right? And you've been posting about that. You posted about, I think it was Massachusetts. Or was it Maine? Maybe it was Maine.
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts recently, the governor there signed a bill that updates the state credit union statute there, and Massachusetts is the 4th or 5th state in the last 3 to 5 years to at least the 4th or 5th to do that kind of thing. But you make the point we're in a new administration. I mean, this is stuff that happened. The roots of this stuff is well back into last year, if not before. I mean, when these things happen, it's often a multi-year process. So I don't know that we can put a whole lot of
Okay. That's
correlation between that. But it is part of this longer ongoing process of more and more states updating their state credit union statutes. I don't know the degree to which, and one of the things that I really want to investigate a little more is the degree to which we might expect more of that to continue. You know, a lot of these changes when they're happening, first off, as these things happen, generally what's included is a bunch of technical changes and then things that generally make it easier for credit unions to do business and easier for consumers to join. And in some cases, certainly in Michigan, where I'm based, you know, there are laws that allow credit unions to have a statewide field of membership. So federal charter doesn't allow that. So you see credit unions who, in some cases, are converting from a federal charter to a state charter, in part to take advantage of statewide fields of membership. If you look at charter conversion data going back for most years over the course of the last decade, the number of conversions from a federal charter to a state charter vastly outnumbers the other way around. The one exception was in one year when basically a whole bunch of credit unions in Louisiana converted from state to federal because it was, you know, more affordable or something like that. But it is part of this ongoing process as more credit unions switch to a state charter out of this idea that there is some more flexibility there. And, you know, the states can maybe be a little bit more nimble than a federal charter can.
So if I'm in Massachusetts and I'm a credit union there, what does this tell me? Like, what's the benefit? So if I'm a federal, I have the option of switching, which I didn't before, that would allow me to get more membership and grow. Or is it their tax or you know, like you said, doing business, some of the restrictions around you know, being not for profit or you know, those sorts of things. I don't want to get too deeply into that, but I'm trying to get where the impetus for switching, you know, because what I see, just a little background on the question is, I see all kinds of people do this, but then what I call it swimming with the sharks. They got their own little lake and they're happy, or they think they're happy, but they keep looking at that ocean and they go, "Ooh, there's so much fish in there. I could do some damage in the ocean." But to fish in that ocean, you need like a trawler and you need like more stuff than you need for the lake. But we just kind of hop over to the ocean and see how it goes. That's kind of what I see a lot. Is that kind of, or is there some other value that I'm missing?
You know, in some cases, it's really, really minor stuff, such as one of the things in Massachusetts, they changed some of the rules around annual meeting processes. So, you know, basically like things that allow for electronic member voting or adding like associate level board director seats. All of that was stuff in that happened in the Massachusetts conversion. So in some cases, yeah, it is about, as you say, kind of moving from the lake to swimming in the ocean. But in other instances, some of the stuff included in these updates is really pretty minor and is more about how the credit union kind of does business. You know, and one of the things with Massachusetts was this was not something that I think they referred to it as like the most substantial update to the state charter in 30 years. So, you know, I don't know what was going on in Massachusetts credit unions in, you know, the early 1990s.
Stone tablets and it was legal to use a wheelbarrow to keep your money in or something like that.
Yeah,
for the drive-through. But yeah, that was what caught my eye, was this big, you know, it was a sweeping change. And certainly, you know, I think a lot of these updates to some of these rules were COVID related, I would imagine. You know, getting a meeting, like the quorum meeting, you know, that's always been an interesting thing at the credit
union. You know, I think in some cases, but again, that's you're looking at Massachusetts, and some of that may have been, but I think what we're not going to really see is if there are updates that end up being made to some of this stuff, because you know, it's not like they do it and it's one and done. Okay, great, we updated the charter. We don't need to do this again for another 30 years. You know, my suspicion is that most states end up going back to or most credit union leagues end up going back to their legislatures every handful of years and say, hey, you know what? Okay, now we need to look at changing this. Now we need to look at changing this. And so if there are changes that do come about as a result of COVID, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually don't see that stuff until a couple of years down the line, because first off, we're still in it. I think there probably is a sense that people don't know yet what they don't know, at least in terms of how it affects business. One of the things that we've reported on, and it's been said a lot, is we haven't yet, Todd Harper talked about this in a Q&A, the new NCUA chairman talked about this in a Q&A. We've got it up on our site today. We don't fully know yet the impact of the pandemic on a lot of credit unions, because there's been so many efforts by the government, state and local, to prop up consumers and help with stimulus payments and, you know, loan forbearances, things like that. So a lot of delinquency trends and loss trends may take longer to reveal themselves, because consumers have had some extra help that they wouldn't maybe ordinarily have in a quote unquote normal recession. So as that stuff begins to reveal itself, and if there are more problem institutions this year than there were last year, that's when I think you may start to see this sense of, okay, well, you know, we had A, B, and C here, and that was a trend. And so this is something that we can tie back to, you know, issues in the state statute. And we need to fix that.
So Jay Powell was just on, he was on CNBC, but I don't know if that's where he was. I think he might have been broadcasting to everybody, and he basically said that we have 9 million people out of work. He was making your point. And that is as much as the height of the last 2008 sort of hit, right? But the reason that we're not feeling it in the stock market, other than GME, is way down today. But the idea that these chickens haven't come home to roost, I think is kind of, you know, the way I put it in my southern approach there. But I think it's a pretty strong argument that that's true. And so if it is that we could expect that, and this is going to lead into the second half of our discussion, which is you posted a really good article about auto lending that I wanted to talk a little bit about, because you know, we're looking for a profit center. That's a big one. That, you know, and whether it could be offset by something else. But so he was saying that basically he was not painting a pretty picture of where we are, and he was also sort of saying, look, if you're counting on sort of herd immunity to drive that back up, even with the moves that have been made by the administration, we're a long way off from that. So now, to be fair, he's, you know, they're always kind of dire, right? I mean, yeah. It's easier to predict doomsday and not have it be doomsday than it is to predict, you know, utopia and have it be doomsday. But he certainly was making your point, and him coming out and say that will no doubt have an effect on how economists are reworking their schedules for 2021 and what they're doing. So as you've been looking into this, what are you hearing from the credit unions you talk to in the sense of, you know, how are they approaching 2021, 2022? Other than cautiously and afraid?
My sense from talking to people is, and I don't think this is just credit unions, I think this is, you know, everybody is, you know, if we can get to like July 1st, then maybe we can take a deep breath. Because I do think that's kind of what people are looking at right now is, you know, there was this long talk for a long time of, you know, the winter is going to be awful. Well, we are in it now, and it is. And so, but you know, we have a vaccine that's beginning to be rolled out despite some issues with that, but you know, that takes time. And you know, weather and consumer behavior patterns and all this play into this too. So I think most credit unions are generally just expecting that, you know, things are going to be rough for the first half of the year, but hopefully there will begin to be some sort of return to normalcy in the second half of the year. But return to normal sort of depends on what you're talking about. I mean, you know, normal consumer behaviors, yes, but that, you know, example like mortgages, there was some analysis last year at one point that mortgages accounted for, you know, 90% or better of credit union mortgage activity or credit union lending activity in 2020, just because of the refi boom. You know, once you refi your house, that you're not going to do it again. So there's only so many people who can do that, and so many times that people are going to do that. So that is starting to dissipate a little bit, though of course that will carry on for a while. But you know, at some point we're going to start to see that slow down, and that's going to have a big impact on just dollar amounts in terms of credit union loan volumes. Same thing with auto lending. I don't think people are really expecting auto lending to do a whole lot, at least in the initial part of the year. But you know, I think there is a hope that as people get more and more people get vaccinated and we get closer to the middle of the year and, you know, the third, fourth quarter, if things begin to resume to normal, there is a little bit, you know, people are more comfortable going back on dealer lots, things like that.
You think it's pent up demand? Like, for example, you know, hey, we were going to get another car, but we've decided not to for various reasons, you know, job stability or whatever. Now we're kind of through this. But I wonder, you know, when you try to take the cause and effect of this, like work from home, like, you know, I love that you said you've been working from home for 10 years. I've been doing the same thing like 12 years and I don't even notice it anymore. But everybody else used to be like, oh, how do you do that? What do you do? And, you know, it was just sort of, well, that's just what I've done. But when we look at that now, my wife, you know, I got 3 cars in the driveway. I'm like, so I go outside and it's like, I don't know, I don't think I'll drive this truck today. I feel like I'm at Enterprise, right? You know, where they let you pick whatever car you want.
Yeah.
Like every day I got a few choices. I could take this GTI. I'm feeling kind of speedy, but they're all paid off, so I'm not so worried about that. But I don't have an impetus. But then I'll give you one more little thing. I wonder if there's any chance, and this is another thing you kind of wrote about, was some of the new regulators looking at what's going on. Like maybe there's some move towards like Tesla, right? Maybe there's some, maybe the answer is spend the money out. Like they were saying, solar is going to be one of the biggest markets, period. We don't have enough solar installers, you know? That's kind of one of Biden's little, you know, talking points is, oh yeah, we took your Keystone thingy away, but we'll repurpose all of you into, you know, fresh, clean energy jobs or whatever, even though, you know, I kind of liked working on the pipeline and don't want to climb on someone's roof, but whatever, there's other jobs. But point is that could some of those be, and if that's the case, do Canadians start shifting that way? Do they shift their products and services? Because like I know Canadians that offer solar, say in Oregon, you know, but what they did was they went out and figured out the tax credits and helped the members figure it out to do, because it's a complex asset to do a loan on.
I mean, you know, there may be credit unions that begin to do some of that kind of shifting, but I mean, auto lending makes up such a substantial portion of the industry's overall loan activity. You know, you couldn't shift that overnight. Even if there was, you know, a substantial appetite for it of any kind. But, you know, one of the things with auto lending that I think is going to make a difference is, you know, what's for most people the reason you need a car other than to schlep your kids around everywhere? It's to go to work. And so I think I'm going to be curious to see what happens as we begin to come out of this. You know, do all employers just say, okay, everybody back to the office? Or is there more of an ongoing, and does acceptance of work from home become permanent? You know, I know there's a lot of credit unions that have said we shifted to this work from home position much better and much faster than we ever thought we could. And yeah, every industry had to do that. And I think, you know, you look at the way credit unions have adopted technology over the years, and obviously there's a substantial, you know, substantial resources that have to be put towards rolling out technology. But, you know, credit unions roll out new technology updates over an extended period of time. And that's kind of how the industry normally does things, is very slowly, one foot at a time. And they didn't have the ability to do that with moving people to a remote work posture. They just had to throw everybody into it. And it worked by and large for the most part. And that's not true of just credit unions. That's true of most industries that don't directly face consumers. So, you know, what will that mean in the long term for you know, auto lending if more and more consumers are just working from home? You know, you're certainly putting less miles on your car may last longer. We're already at a point now where we've gone from a 5-year standard term on a car loan to, it's not unusual to get 6 or 7 years. So all of that kind of is interconnected, but I'll be fascinated to see how that plays out.
I'm muted because my dogs are freaking out. But yeah, I completely agree. I think that that's it's all up in the air, and you know, part of me thinks that we're just not going back, but part of me thinks, like I've heard both sides. I've done surveys, you know, even on this show, and Mike and I have asked, hey, you know, are you gonna stay with it? Like we had people go, you know, we were building we were about to like go buy a land to build a new headquarters because we were running out of space. This solved that problem. So, and now we found we're functioning just fine. We're not gonna buy that space. We're gonna do this. But then we have other people go, the minute we can bring everybody back, we will. And, you know, we believe in that. We believe in that synergy. I think the answer's somewhere in between, but.
I've heard that. You know, I talked to Bill Cheney from Schools First last summer, and they were in the middle of, you know, building a new headquarters when all of this hit. And I said, what are you going to do with this headquarters space? Because you've got people working from home now. And he said, I'm paraphrasing because it's 6-8 months ago, but he said, we're not going to stop growing. We're still going to need people. And at some point we will need a place to put our staff as it grows. So, you know, a new headquarters facility like that is still going to be necessary and relevant. Now, maybe because Schools First is the 3rd or 4th biggest credit union in the country, maybe they're a little bit of an outlier, whereas a credit union that's like 500-600 million is in a different boat, you know, closer to what you were talking about, John. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm always curious when I see news releases about, you know, XYZ credit union, you know, putting all of this money toward, you know, brand new state-of-the-art headquarters when everybody's working at home.
You're on mute again, John.
I never mute myself on these things.
I'm here for you, man. I'm watching out for you.
So Mike,
I was worried it was me. I was worried I was going further depth.
Yeah, it's okay. Mike, you were mentioning TrueCar.
Yeah, I interviewed them. I don't know if you may have seen this report as well, Aaron, that they put out a press release a while back about they forecast a 10% increase in new car sales for 2021. And when I talked to them, they said, yeah, everything, you know, March, April, May was really grim. I mean, they were forecasting like dealerships closing and things like that because nobody was buying car for obvious reasons. But then he said, you know, toward the end of Q3 and then Q4, and then especially in December, things just took off like a rocket. People were back buying cars. So I asked him and said, well, was that pent up demand, do you think? And he said, yeah, that's pretty much what we see. But then we see that momentum really moving forward into 2021. So I'm thinking, gosh, there might be opportunities for auto lending for credit unions based on what they're forecasting. Whether it comes true or not, I don't know, but that's according to TrueCar.
Well, the other part of that too is, you know, everybody talks about a K-shaped recovery and this idea that, you know, there's this segment of the population that's doing fine and there's this segment of the population that is not doing fine at all. And so what you may be seeing right now is those folks who are going out and buying cars are the folks who are still doing okay. And there may be a tail to that where, you know, once people start getting back to work and, you know, the government's able to start ramping down the expanded unemployment benefits and things like that, and the economy begins to get back to normal, then you start to see the pent-up demand from those folks who are out of work for so many months coming back in, on top of the folks who are still buying cars who were already doing fine to begin with.
Right, exactly.
You know, isn't TrueCar predicting more car sales a little like toaster companies predicting more bread sales? I feel like I don't know that I trust the TrueCar base.
Well, that's why I said whether it comes true or not, we'll see. But you know, based on what they're seeing.
One of our frequent guests, Paul from New Mexico, was mentioning that his credit unions, they're moving into their new headquarters, but they're being flexible about work from home. But that's because there's a reason to be flexible. I don't know that once that reason's gone, and you know, there's a lot of argument. I want to come back to the Schools First stuff there. We have a sort of an expert in that area, Mr. Kevin Sarber, who is in that market and worked at Westcom for a long time and kind of knows that whole area. Kevin, what are you seeing out your way in California? I know California is a significant part of the car market because you guys just love to get on.
We love our cars.
You enjoy smelling asphalt and exhaust. I know that's a favorite thing. So I'll tell a quick story. One time, Kevin picked me up and we had to go from Yorba Linda, if you know this area, all the way over to Pasadena, and somehow Kevin ticked off one of those chips guys, like you know, Honcho or whatever his name was, and he got so mad at us he drove by and punched our car on my side of the window and pointed at me like I was the one driving.
CHP.
What's that?
Kevin?
Yeah, it was Kevin. Kevin did that, and I don't even remember how you ticked him off, but he tried to rip off your rear view mirror to beat me.
I don't remember the part that I did, but I'm sure it's been embellished over the years. But
is it not a true story, Kevin?
It's a true story.
All right. So speaking of cars, tell us a little bit about that market and what you're seeing.
Well, I think, much like Aaron was talking about, I see a lot depends on what the stay at home versus the going back to work in an office. I mean, I know we bought my wife a car in let's see, it's almost a year and a half, or right about a year and a half. And she has 2,000 miles on the car because it sits in the garage because she's been working from home since before the pandemic. So, if there's situations like that, then I think the demand for cars is going to be less. If, and there's a whole bunch of things at play. Like you said, there could be pent-up demand and things like that. But I think I would have a rough time figuring out how we would get to a 10% growth year over year in auto, just because I can't figure out how, what would cause the demand after what we've been through, over the last almost a year at this point.
I have an idea. So I am part of the like my senior class in my high school was one of the biggest ones ever. So I was born in 1970, and apparently there's a huge boom during that time because all these guys were coming home from Vietnam, which my dad was in the war. So also it's noted that during blackouts, we have baby booms. Anytime we're forced to stay home, we have baby booms. So I'm predicting that we will see the class of 18 years from now, do the math, Kevin, 2031, be the biggest class anyone's ever seen. And they're all going to turn 16 and need cars. So you can write that down. And by then we won't need, it'll be like some sort of flying drone car. But
yeah, but that's one of the unique things I think seriously about car sales too, is it's impacted by the fact that a lot of kids don't want a car anymore. I mean, there's a whole bunch, when I turned 16 in the 40s, as John would say, the morning of my 16th birthday, I was standing in line at the DMV to get my license. And that's the way it was for everyone. And I've seen some of our kids' friends that they're 21 years old, they don't have a driver's license yet. They're 23 years old, they don't have a driver's license yet. I just think it's different. The millennial or Gen Z or whatever, whatever we're calling them now, but that group that's coming out is much less focused on some of the things that we were focused on when we were coming through that age bracket.
It's fascinating. So Aaron, I want to bring up another tweet that you put out there I thought was interesting. There's a story you guys put out on the new capital proposal. I'd love to just, can you just give us the P's and Q's of that? I was fascinated because the headline is, and how it could piss off banks, which I thought was pretty cool.
Well,
so,
isn't every NCUA capital proposal? I mean, we could pretty much every one of those could be headlined how it could piss off banks.
Right, because just the fact that we exist piss off banks, right?
Yeah.
So
the short version is NCUA continues to put forward rules related to capital and expanding the way that credit unions can use capital, and banks don't like that. The thing that I'm going to be most interested to see is and certainly a lot of the stuff in the last couple of months has been more about secondary capital, but the risk-based capital debate started in something like 2013, and they've been they continue to delay it. So the risk-based capital rule that passed a couple of years after that has still not been implemented. And when they delayed it a couple of years ago, the idea was we're going to delay this until 2022, but it's going to give us time to, look at capital at a broader level and rework some of those rules. When they delayed that, Todd Harper, then a board member, now the chairman, suggested, we don't need to keep delaying this any further. There are issues such as concentration risk that impact much more of the industry and are a much greater threat to the share insurance fund than things like capital. So I'll be interested to see how NCUA moves on capital now that he is in the chairmanship. I don't think there's going to be a massive change. But one of the big changes that came out a couple of weeks ago in the board meeting was basically they've reworked who counts as a complex credit union, and made it a little easier to qualify as a complex credit union earlier. If I'm remembering that right, which I may not be, but they have essentially redefined complex credit.
Right? They adjusted
What's
the
that?
low. They adjusted how to designate low income designations and underserved credit unions, right?
Yeah, it essentially, now if you're 500 million or more, you now count as a complex credit union, and you can opt in early, if I believe. Again, I haven't. We didn't talk about this in advance, so I didn't reread the story, and I apologize for that.
No worries. I read your feed all the time, so. But yeah, I think the thing I thought was fascinating was it should unlock some of that capital, and it kind of goes hand in hand with some of the other things they've done, like the CECL adjustment, right? We're going to adjust CECL, which, funny enough, would have been a big story in 2020 had everything else not happened, right? Turned out to be a blip. It was another one of those things like you're talking about where it was sort of a forced, we got to get this done. Yeah, who cares about that right now? We'll just do it. We got to move on and get everybody working from home or what other issues we're facing. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting because, so many cranes in that range, in that $500 million range, when you talk to them, they're fearful of making those investments. And it comes back to what I was talking about, converting from a state charter to or federal charter to a state charter, thinking that, hey, if I'm just in the lake or in the sea, I'll naturally get more fish, when there are investments to be made. You look at like Chime and what Chime's done. Chime's gone through the roof. I mean, they are, for a startup like that, for a banking startup like that to get as big as they are, to be 14 billion at this point, as many members as they have, based on all couple simple things that were all digital space, right? And so there's clearly a way to do that. And by the way, the Crayon story is better than Chime's. We've always done the thing where, their big story is, hey, we're going to give you your paycheck early, when the ACH comes in. That's like their big game. Crayons have been doing that for years, but whatever reason, we don't count because we look like the Kiwanis Club to everybody. And those guys look like, that people think we meet down at the Golden Corral and say the Pledge of Allegiance. That's what a credit union is. It's just a naming scheme of it. And so just even that, trying to fish in that lake. So when the asset sizes are unlocked, what I've been noticing, and I don't know if you've been noticing this, but I'm watching those credit unions change hands. The leadership is aging out, and the successors who are coming in, they're younger, they've got a lot of ideas. Watch some of them shoot up, watch them, make that mega leap, cross that chasm from 750 to $1 billion very quickly, which is pretty cool. But they're investing. But then there are others who are still in the midst of that they feel as though they're constrained by the NCUA. That's the answer they'll give you when you say, well, you guys, you should look at upgrading your onboarding system or whatever. They're going to tell you, yeah, we would, but we're just not in the spot we can do that.
Yeah. You talk about that 500 million mark. I mean, we had a story on the site yesterday. From that 500 million spot and above, a lot of analysts are really expecting that we're going to see increased consolidation among that. And obviously credit unions are continuing to emerge, but we're going to see more and more large credit unions coming together in the months and years ahead, out of this belief that basically just like, there's a quote in the story basically said $1 billion used to be enough and it's not now. And they know that. And somebody else said, more and more large credit unions are going to be entertaining this idea of merging with another large credit union, in part because they don't want to be the one credit union that doesn't get called up for a merger, because all of a sudden, whereas they used to be competing with a $2 billion credit union and a $3 billion credit union, now they're competing with one $5 billion credit union, and they don't want to be in that boat.
Yeah, and by the way, mergers are another very common succession plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Though not at that level, I think generally. I mean, that happens a lot more as you go further down the asset spectrum. I think when you're talking at that level, I don't think that's succession planning is quite as much a factor there.
No, I agree. But increasingly for even aging out boards, right, which is one of the industry's, other issues that is sort of that elephant in the room, right? It's hard to convince your 90-year-old chair that, you know, the iPhone's not a fad, right? But, you know, we're seeing other brands make moves to move that direction. You know, be interesting. One thing I would love is that, and I don't, you know, I'm gonna ask Kevin this. Kevin, I don't think we're allowed to pay board members, right? Still,
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
are we allowed to pay board members? Did that change and I missed it?
That's a big issue still.
Yeah, absolutely.
'Cause
Yeah,
that, I
it's,
think,
it's not, I mean, we have a lot, we have aging board members, we have aging membership. We have a lot of challenges in kind of breaking into to the younger folks.
Yep. Well, Aaron, so last thing here, I just want to make sure if anybody's got any questions, because we like to be interactive here. So I want to see if Paul or somebody wants to ask a question. The other thing, and Kevin might, or Mike, the other thing is I noticed the new CU Journal site, and I have to say it's very cool. You guys really did a great job on updating that site. So congratulations on that. I'm going to bring it up now so everybody can see it. But if you haven't been to cujournal.com in a while, it's definitely much cooler, and you could see just a big change from where it was. It was a big jump, I think.
Thank you. You know, the site is a function of the fact that we in August, I think, merged into our sister publication, American Banker. We've always worked closely with the folks at AB, but we're a part of AB now. And though we've still retained the Credit Union Journal brand, nothing about what we do has changed. You know, we still are committed to covering the industry and writing about it from that 30,000-foot analytical view about here's what happens and here's what it means and here's why it's important. Beyond that, it's enabled us to work even more closely with the staff at American Banker, who are substantially larger than we are in more places than we are, have access to more things than we do, and they're a terrific award-winning site. So it has only improved what we do. I really encourage folks to visit our site, and as well, you know, to visit American Banker. If you're basically, if you're an American Banker subscriber now, you have access to CU Journal, and vice versa. If you're a CU Journal subscriber, you have access to American Banker and a wealth of content there, much of which, no matter how much the industry may want to think about it, still relates to credit unions. Yep. There is this idea that, you know, we're not a bank, and so what we do is different and all that. We're still swimming in the same pool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm on it every day, Aaron. So I love that site. So
appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, the banking stories, they're so relatable to credit unions and stuff. So I'm always reading those. Like Penny Crossman. Oh my gosh, she does the best story. She gets the choice stories. Holy smokes. But yeah, I'm on it every day. I love that site. I love what you guys are doing there.
Thank you.
I am sorry that you have to work with Brad. I mean, WB King. I would probably.
I like Brad. Brad's terrific. Brad has been working with us on and off for 7 years.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
I mean, he was one of the
it's
first.
Been ages.
Big. When we came out, he was one of our first big supporters. Yeah, he definitely was. I've always had to make American Banker, and I noticed these two pulled together. I thought the new site was good. I think the merger's great. I do think that having access and cross pollination of the stories is really valuable. And you know, you can see that Penny Crossman is great. I've done some interviews with her. Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. And so just, you know, very excited for what the future holds. I think this really, we've had off and on things like this. And I think this feels like a gap that needed to be filled. And so I'm enjoying the stories. And for those of you who don't follow Aaron on Twitter, I absolutely recommend it, because there's, you know, it's Passman at Passman CUJ. I'll put it in the link there, but he's always posting good stuff. And
I'm gonna have to start posting so much more now that you've hyped me like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're gonna have to.
Pressure's on.
I'm gonna post you on my LinkedIn and see what happens. So we'll torture you on that. So does anyone have any questions while we're waiting? I'm gonna kind of close out here, but I wanted to. Brad, did you have any other things that you wanted to bring up? Or not Brad, I called you Brad. I would leave. I would just hang up. You should just jump on. Aaron, do you have anything else that you want to bring up?
No, man. We've covered the stuff that that I had thought of to discuss. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that anybody has, though. I always, I think I said this earlier. I'm not an expert, and if I truly knew a lot about credit unions, I'd be running one rather than writing about them. But I
You sound like
I
me and
lucked,
my SEC, my
yeah.
SEC development. Do not do what John
I
says.
lucked into the best job, so this has been a nice little place to sort of plant my flag, and I don't know.
Well, you're
Probably have to
doing a
double
great
dip for
job.
a long time to come.
I think you're bringing stories that are very important with angles that everybody needs. So thank you for joining us. And we were pursuing you, and we actually had somebody bow out, and you were willing to fill in the gaps. So thank you. That is
Happy to.
great. We had you on our short list, and so thank you for coming in today.
I have a question,
Real
John.
quickly, Mike, did you have any other things?
Yeah,
Or
I had a
Kevin?
question. Aaron, what have you heard on and this kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier with kind of the government propping people up, and we haven't seen kind of the fallout quite yet, but what have you heard in regards to collections? Because I remember, gosh, May, June, July last year, people were like, oh my gosh, we're just kind of waiting for that shoe to drop, the collection shoe to drop, basically. What have you heard on that front? Because I haven't heard quite the horror stories that we were kind of expecting in the collections area. What have you heard there?
I haven't heard horror stories. I think some of that is, I hate to say, like, they'll come eventually, because
Yeah, has that shoe dropped yet?
yeah, that feels ominous and depressing. But I do have to imagine that, just like everything else, some of the collections landscape has been impacted by the fact that, as you said, Mike, there continue to be various stimulus efforts that are helping to prop consumers up and keep them current. Yeah. That being said, those things are going to go away at some point. So I'll be interested to see what happens. I hope it's not as bad as it could be.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
You know something? You just made me think of something. So, in 2008, we were really caught flat-footed in collections. I remember crayons that, we go to their collection department, it's 2 people in a recipe box, and they're big crayons. I mean, they just never had a problem with charge-offs. Their papers were A, it just never hit. And that's one thing that may be mitigating some of what we're seeing as well, is that I don't think anybody ever ramped down the effort that they put into collections post 2008. I don't think anybody said, okay, we're done now, all of you can go. I think they kept those collection departments and the gains they made from a technology perspective and from the other perspectives. And so I'm wondering also, because like I said, you weren't the first in line. When it came down to it, it was everybody wanted to pay their bills. It was just a matter of who got there first. And if your credit union was the first one in line, maybe or maybe not, and when the money ran out, the rest of the line was told to go home. So I do think that there could be some some gains from that we didn't think about, and some technology is there as well, because we may be keeping up with it better. We may be, banks did the same thing during that time. We may be keeping up with it better and preventing those losses a little better, hopefully. So that was just an angle I hadn't thought of.
Yeah. One of the stories that I was interested in that we reported on the fall was this question of, as consumers' stimulus checks came in from the government, the $1,200 checks or whatever it was that everyone was getting in the spring, if somebody owes you, do you garnish that? And is that something that goes toward collections? And there was a lot of pushback against the idea of doing that. It's I think even Todd Harper from NCUA came out and really encouraged credit unions not to do that. I don't know that. I think there was a little bit of a similar push when this last round started coming out. I don't know if the tone down volume this time was related to the idea that maybe it's okay to do that now, or just people got the message last time, and what the point of these checks is not to pay the bills that you owe, but to just keep food on the table.
Right.
Yeah, because you want to keep that economy pumping. And we saw a lot of really cool stuff that credit unions did. I think by and large, credit unions, that it wouldn't have been a thought in their head anyways, but by and large, I think they did the right thing. And that's the best part about the credit union industry. I'm sure you've been around it so long, that.
Empathy, man. Empathy was the name of the game last year. So
yeah. All right. Well, we're closing out here. I want to just take a minute and thank Aaron. And Aaron, we'll post your Twitter. This will actually be posted. So we'd love for you you're welcome to post it or do whatever you want with it. Also, Mike posts these as well. and they're always fun, and would love to have you back sometime. And hopefully one day,
Happy to.
like I'll see you again in person. I know we've met in person a couple times, but unlike Mike, I'm not running away from you. So for coming up here, just real quick, Melissa, if you want to share the screen real fast. So, and then Aaron, we're going to get, we'll get your Twitter feed out there, and make sure we post the link, and just exciting stuff. So Tuesday, February 9th, you know what's happening Tuesday, February 9th, Mike Lawson?
It looks like you're having a webinar.
Mike, we are having a webinar. That's what's happening. I know that you didn't think that, but that's exactly what's happening. And we're going to talk about controlling your digital destiny. Three things, Mike. You know what those three things are?
No, I'm assuming they'll be revealed during the webinar, though.
I'll tell you right now, Mike.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you right now what they are.
Okay.
That way you don't have to show up. I know you're busy that day.
Oh, I'll be
So
there.
you got to control your own destiny. You got to have some programmers. We're going to talk about what that means, because, you know, Aaron, how many crayons have you seen where they're trying to fight a battle with off-the-shelf products, you know, and wondering why they're not winning, when it's all about customization in the new world? That's an article. You should show up and write that. So
I'll get right on it, boss.
what's that?
I'll get right on it, boss.
Awesome. Well, get Brad to do it. But no, actually, I want to be coherent. You go ahead and do it. I'd like to be able to understand it. He puts the words in a very different order than what most humans read. The second one is not leaving the feature set behind, because we're starting to see, and this is one of the things I was talking about with a friend today from a big credit union. The influx of people that started using RDC. Go out, you know, Aaron, if you want to have some fun, here's a story for you. Go to Google Play and just start looking up credit unions, and just start reading the reviews, you know, the recent reviews. Start like in November and a little before that, because there's all these people that were forced to use the mobile apps right away. And it uncovered all these problems in RDC and all of these other things. And so one of the things that, you know, you've got to do to improve your digital destiny and your offerings is you've got to have the ability to start rolling things out faster. You mentioned earlier about the slog that is the digital rolling. You know, you kind of put that together, but that's not what Chime is doing. That's not what Bank of America is doing. And, you know, you may think you're competing with the $5 billion credit union down the street, but ultimately you're not really. You're really competing with the really big players in the market. And that's because of digital. You know, it just wasn't that way before. No one went into a Starbucks and said, you know, I wish my credit union looked like this place. But online that happens. You know, we get comparisons that are very different. So that's that second one there. And then the third one, you have to come to find out. The link's right there. We hope you'll sign up. It's going to be fun. We're going to, you know, kind of talk about these things. I really want to help people to understand where they're going, what they're trying to do. And you just got to have, you know, if 2020 taught us anything, is you got to be able to pivot quickly. But now I also think we need to, you know, and by the way, my friend was lamenting the exact same thing. He said, you know, there were Android devices out there we didn't even know existed, but they showed up when we saw that increase in digital and realized that the cameras weren't good enough to deal with RDC. And they were all mad at us, not their cameras. You know, you're going to blame the app and not the phone. You know, you bought the phone in 2012 or whatever, and all of a sudden you think you can use it for taking pictures of checks when it barely, you know, takes a picture of your dog. But that's what's been kind of happening. And it's hard for members to understand, because that phone's been fine because they never used it for digital before. So those are the kinds of things. We hope you'll come to the webinar, check it out, and sign up. The link's in the offering there. So with that, we're right at 2. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. I'll expect this article. You might have a few questions. I'll just, you probably work off this. I gave you enough, I think. So, no, that was great. And I really enjoy writing. You said you're a novelist, by the way. Do you have a novel? I tried to look you up on Amazon.
No, I should say unpublished novelist.
Oh, that's no fun. I was trying to find it.
It just sounds so much more glamorous if I just say novelist.
There you go.
Yeah, it's in your Twitter. I was like, he's a novelist. That's cool. Then I thought, well, maybe a novelist is like some new thing, like a MAGAist or something. I don't know. Anyways, I want to read your novel. Send it to me. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.